Welcome to the test drive of the new Tata Zest. After a couple of days of heavy rain in Goa, here we are today. The sun's out and it's bright and shiny. Tata will be hoping that the sun shines on the new Zest. After all, this product, when it's launched next month, is going to jump straight into one of the most competitive segments in the Indian car market. There are already three strong contenders in play. Those include the Maruti Dzire, the Honda Amaze and the recently launched Hyundai Accent. However, let's not forget that Tata Motors were the ones who originally created the compact sedan segment with the Indigo CS, as it was known when it was launched a few years ago. So what's new about this car? It's based on a revamped version of the Tata Vista platform that they call the X1, although it's been extensively re-engineered. Heading up the engineering side of this project is none other than Mr. Tim Leviton. He's been involved with cars such as the Rolls-Royce Phantom and the JCB Diesel Max project, which has the record as the fastest diesel-powered car in the world. So he knows a thing or two about engineering. The design, well, that's courtesy of a gentleman called Pratap Bose, who heads up Tata's design centers in Turin, in Pune, and in Coventry. So there's obviously a lot of pedigree that goes into making this car what it is. So let's check it out. This new grille, the new look in the front, it's something that Pratap Bose and his team call the humanity line. There are also a few defining shapes to the side of the car, which we shall show you now, that run along the length of the car. We like the way it looks. However, I find this panel here to be just a little clunky, and there's a lot of metal and there's not much detail. So I don't know, maybe some badging or a turn signal indicator on the front wings would perhaps add a little more character to the design. The car we have here is the Diesel AMT. The visual differentiator are these alloy wheels. We'll show you the wheels of the petrol version later, which are different in shape. However, they're all the same tire size. They run on 185 60 section R15 diameter wheels. Coming to the rear, this is actually one of the prettier angles of the Zest. These wraparound tail lights, the thick chrome bar, and of course the inverted trapezoidal black section on the rear bumper. They add character. Now let's look at the badges. So what we see here is XMA. X denotes, of course, the new X1 platform. M, because this is the mid-spec variant. And A denotes the automated manual transmission, also known as F-tronic. Stepping into the new Tata Zest, what's immediately evident is just how much Tata have upped their game in terms of fit and finish and quality. If you look inside, the choice of materials, the colors, the way it all comes together, it displays far more cohesive thought than anything else we've seen from Tata till now. And I must say the finish is also very impressive. It all feels well built, well put together. The little bit of chrome trim on the AC vents, the metallic finish on the steering wheel, and these wings on the center console. Piano black, well, this is a little bit of in vogue fashion for car interiors lately. We've seen that. So we have some piano black here. We have a little piano black strip. So all this adds a little bit of detail to the interior. It also makes it a nicer place to sit in. This, of course, is the new automated manual transmission. We'll also tell you how it works and how it is to drive really in the real world. So that's it about the dashboard and interiors. Now I'm going to just pop into the back seat and I'm going to tell you how it feels to be in the rear. Now we're in the rear seat of the Zest. The reason I'm sitting here is because I've adjusted the front seat, the driver's seat, to my comfort, and in the back seat I still have more than enough legroom. In fact, you can see the distance between my knees and the front seat back. The seat cushioning is a little on the softer side. Perhaps a little firmer cushioning would be better on longer drives, but the seat back angle feels just about right. It has adjustable headrests, so that you're more comfortable. And if you see, the level of finish at the rear is very good as well. The only thing that's missing is a seat back pocket on the passenger seat, which would have added to utility, but otherwise there's not much to complain. Headroom, as you can see, is adequate as well. Shoulder room, well, it seems to be good enough for 3 people. 3 people my size would be a squeeze, but for most Indian families it should be adequate. So now we are ready to drive off in the new Tata Zest. But of course, there are some startup procedures that we need to follow. To begin with, the transmission lever has to be in neutral, or N. My foot has to be on the brake. Only then will the car start. This is the mid-spec variant of the Zest, like we mentioned earlier, so which is why it has manual air conditioning controls. The top of the line has a fully automated climate control. The stereo in this, it's got everything you realistically need. It's got USB connectivity, it's got Bluetooth connectivity, it's got steering mounted audio controls, and it has a total of 8 speakers, which are 4 speakers plus 4 tweeters. So it has good sound quality as well, which we can get you to listen to. It can also pair up to a total of 4 Bluetooth devices. You can sync your phone book to the car. It can also read out text messages. It has a text-to-speech converter, but that's not in this version. That's in the next higher version, when the top-of-the-line Zest, which also gets SD card control. But we'll show you that later. Now, let's put the car into reverse. So I got my foot on the brake. I put the lever in R for reverse. The diesel engine in the Zest, as is commonly known, is a Fiat-sourced engine. Tata calls it Quadrajet. This F-tronic transmission that's used in the diesel Zest is also designed and developed by Fiat. However, Tata's engineers have optimized it for Indian conditions. There's a sport button as well, but I'm not going to touch that right now. However, now here's another interesting thing about the Zest. I put it in A for auto, or drive mode, and we're driving off. Now, if you felt that little bit of a jerk, that's because the car changed up from first to second gear. So what happens when I come to a halt? So I put my foot on the brake, and I've come to a halt. Now the display shows me 1 for first gear, if you can see that there. So that's first auto. However, I am parked on a bit of a slope. If I take my foot off the brake, it starts rolling back. Unlike a conventional automatic or a CVT transmission, which would hold on an incline, in the case of the Zest, if you take your foot off the brake, it starts to roll back. So you need to go from the brake to the throttle immediately for the clutch to start working. There is a degree of engine noise inside the cabin. Although Tata claims that they work very hard to reduce noise, vibration and harshness. Vibration and harshness, I'm happy to report, have been well controlled, although you can still hear the diesel engine inside the cabin. This engine, it motors smoothly. It produces about 90 PS of power. The re-engineered X1 platform that I was telling you about, Tata have spent a lot of time and effort on fine-tuning the suspension. Keen drivers will be happy to know that the final dynamic sign-off for the Tata Zest was done by none other than Mr. Naren Karthikeyan, India's first Formula 1 driver. So how does it feel like? It feels nice to drive. It's very well damped, to be honest. Of course, these roads are very smooth, but we did try it on a rough patch, and its handling response, its dynamic response, everything is pretty decent. You have some degree of body roll, which is to be expected with the tall cabin, but handling is nice. It has an electric power steering with a centering action, which should make it nice and easy to use in city traffic. Here we're going around a little bit of corners. Now we've got a bit of open room, so I'm going to put my foot in. So now coming back to the automated manual transmission, because that really is the talking point of the new Tata Zest diesel. So like I told you earlier, you need to put the transmission in neutral, and you need to have your foot on the brake to start the car. You also need to have your foot on the brake whenever you want to change from neutral to drive or back again. That is because this is a sort of a safety override. If you notice on the gear lever, there is no trigger or button as you might find in a conventional automatic, and instead the security override is via the brake. So you also have the option of driving it like a manual. So what you need to do is you need to tap it to the side, and it's an M or manual mode. You can see the minus and plus signs over there. Minus is to change down a gear, and plus is to change up a gear. You also have a sport function, which is activated by this button labeled S. When I press the sport function, it pops up on the screen telling me that it's in sport mode. Also what happens is when you're in sport mode, which works in the automatic mode actually, so when you're in sport mode, the gear shift point happens at a higher RPM. That is to give you better performance when you're driving. However, if you are in a sporty mood, it's best instead to tap it to the manual mode and drive it as a manual, which is what I'm going to do now. So I have put it in manual mode. It automatically selects the first gear. I put my foot on the throttle and off we go. One thing drivers will have to get used to is using the handbrake more frequently in the Tata Zest, and that's because it's advisable that you do, since there is no transmission lock function. Now in manual mode I'm in second gear. Of course, if I take it to the red line, which is a little past 4,500 RPM, the transmission will upshift on its own. When you're driving normally, you will tend to feel the gear shifts. The engine note comes down and you can feel the transmission changing gears, the clutch being actuated. It's smooth for the most part. The only time you tend to feel a little bit of a jerk is when it shifts from first to second gear when you're starting off, especially when you're on an incline or when you have 3 or 4 people in the car. It's quite noticeable, but that does not mean it's irritating in any way. However, like I said, you have the manual function, which can make it more comfortable for you to drive if you're not very happy with the way the automatic transmission is working. What we're going to do now is we're going to go and look for some traffic, because that really is where an automated manual is most useful, or where it comes into its own. So we're going to go look for some traffic. We're going to drive the diesel AMT in some traffic, after which we'll be jumping into the petrol Zest. So stay tuned. So now we are on the kind of road that we'd more typically drive on in India. So the road surface is crowned, it's pockmarked. I can't drive too fast because my cameraman is holding onto the camera, but despite the kind of road surface, the Zest's ride is quite well judged. There isn't much road noise coming into the cabin. The suspension is absorbing the bumps well, and this is without any compromise really in the way the car handles. So that's a positive about the Zest. I'm not entirely convinced about the AMT transmission, to be honest, because sometimes I find it just a little bit jerky. which happens particularly in the kind of traffic you have in Goa, where we're testing this car, where you might be making good pace, but then you need to slow down, you need to pick up speed again. That's when you find the transmission gets a little jerky, that the clutch is a little, it's lurching a little bit as it tries to get into the right gear. That aside, overall, the diesel Zest that we've been driving all morning is truly a big step forward. It in fact does nothing about the old Tata here in every department, in the way it's built, in the way the fit and finish is, the way it looks on the inside, the way it feels to drive, the way the various tactile surfaces feel to touch. Tata have really moved the game forward from what they used to do. And not only that, they've moved forward far enough to make the Zest truly a worthy contender within the compact sedan segment. We're going to be driving the petrol Revotron next, and we'll tell you a little more about that. But we're signing off on the diesel Zest now. For more details, more images and everything else, log on to www.autojunction.in. You can also check out our Facebook page, where there are as many pictures as you'd like to see. So do drop by and let us know what you think. Thank you. We're now behind the wheel of the new Tata Zest Revotron petrol. Tata calls this Revotron. It's a revolutionary new engine according to the company. It's a 4-cylinder turbocharged engine. However, there are some differences between this and the car we drove earlier today. This is the top of the line spec. So what do we get in addition to whatever we've seen else? We have a more high-end, more premium infotainment system. This even has SD card compatibility. It's operated via touch, as you can see, and it also has voice control, so you can actually talk to the car to do things like change a track or answer a call or change the temperature settings. You'll notice that this car also has fully automatic temperature control, or climate control as it's commonly known as. This being the Revotron petrol, we also have additional driving modes. All of you must have seen the advertisements about these driving modes. So if I could just ask the camera to pan back here, you'll see that these buttons for Eco and Sport. So Eco, as the name denotes, is the economy mode. Sport is self-explanatory. The third mode, of course, is what Tata Motors engineers call the city mode. That's the default mode. When you start the car, you are by default in city mode. So what do the eco mode and the sport mode do? When you drive in eco mode, basically, of course, a lot depends on how you drive, considering this is a manual, but the way the engine responses, the throttle responses, etc., those are geared towards having a more optimum fuel economy from the car. Sport mode, of course, gives you more rapid throttle response, more fuel going in. After all, these the injectors used in this engine, they are 8-hole injectors, so it achieves better atomization of fuel and control with the ECU and the throttle position sensor all together. You have these different driving modes. Difference in power in absolute terms isn't so much. We haven't seen the maps yet, but from what we understand, the difference would be approximately 10% between the economy mode and the sport mode at the two extremes of the scale. So it's now time for us to actually start driving the Zest Revotron petrol. The clutch is light, the gear shift much improved over whatever else we've seen from Tata Motors till now. The gear throws have been reduced, the shift quality is more positive. The steering feels lighter in this car vis-a-vis the diesel we drove earlier today, and that generally tends to be the case when you have the same car powered by two different engine options. The petrol inevitably feels a little lighter to drive. So we're now in the Revotron petrol in the city mode, which is the default mode. Gear shift quality is much improved than anything else we've seen from Tata Motors before. Throws, well, they're still long throws, but they're better than what you've seen in either the Vista or the Indica. It feels more precise as well. It's a joy actually shifting up and down the box, although it is a little notchy. The good part about this car is that the engine has considerable amount of flexibility. So I'm going to now shift to 4th gear at just under 40 kilometers an hour, and I'm doing barely 1000 RPM, and it's motoring very smoothly. This real-world usability and real-world drivability is what the Indian customer wants eventually, because that's what makes the car easy to drive. The clutch is a little springy, and the clutch action, the take-up of the clutch is a little short, but these are of course pre-production prototypes that we're driving, so hopefully the production versions will have a better weighted clutch. We haven't really found a piece of road where we can stretch this engine and give this car a free run, but from what we understand, it should be considerably quick. Again, this is the version that Naren Karthikeyan particularly likes to drive, so that tells you all you need to know. So in the morning we drove the diesel Zest AMT, and now we've just finished driving the Revotron petrol version of the Zest. There are a few visual differentiators, one being the badging. This has XT, T is for top of the line, and you have the Revotron badge here, which denotes that it's a petrol version. If you walk around to this side of the car, you'll also see that the alloy wheel design for the petrol is different. This is fewer spokes than the diesel design of the wheels that we saw earlier today. Coming back to the badging, M denotes the mid spec, which is what we drove earlier today. T is the top of the line spec. There will be an entry level XC variant as well, which we haven't driven but which Tata will show at launch. This car will be launched sometime in the first week of August, which is not too far away. We don't have any idea on pricing yet, but you can expect it to be priced somewhere between what we have in the segment between the Accent and the Amaze. To conclude, this car, what we see here today, really is the start of a new Tata, and it's not putting it lightly, because this truly is the start of things to come from the company. The Zest will be followed by the Bolt, and then there's the all-new Nexon to come sometime next year. These are cars which are going to re-establish the brand in the Indian market. It's a very significant improvement by the company. The Zest has impressed us with its blend of ride and handling. It looks quite nice as well. The cabin is superb. I would probably stick my neck out or go out on a limb and say that this has the best interiors in the segment at the moment. So put together, it's a competent product. Of course, we yet to have an idea what the price will be. We could guesstimate that the petrol would start somewhere around the 5 lakh rupee mark, and the diesel would start about ₹1 lakh more. The top of the line diesel would stretch to somewhere close to 8 lakh rupees. So that's between 5 and 8 lakhs is the expected pricing of the new Zest. All told, a good car, a good product, and one that deserves to do well in the Indian market. For a fully detailed, comprehensive review of the new Tata Zest, log on to www.autojunction.in.